1.
Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kainan Becker, and today we play Horror Movie Roulette, Tubi Edition. I love Tubi, and Tubi is so deep. There's so many B-rated, B-side, whatever you want to call it, horror movies. There's just tons, and especially creature features. So they got this idea to do Horror Movie Roulette, because I love cheesy 80s and just cheesy horror sci-fi movies in general. And I know a lot of you do as well. I love that deep dive into stuff I've never heard of and stuff I know is not going to be a very good movie, but hopefully fun. So basically, this edition is going to be creature features. So I just spun the dial on my Tubi app, and the first horror / sci-fi creature feature movie that I came upon that I hadn't seen before or heard of, I selected it. And I did that 5 times. So basically, here is a quick review of the 5 movies that I did. And trust me, this is an interesting batch. None of these would I consider really to be a high quality movie or necessarily hidden gems, but a couple of them were pretty fun. So the first movie I picked is called Creature from 1985. And this is a little bit of an Alien cheese ripoff. You could tell that they were trying to do something kind of Alien style out in space, but on a very small budget with actors who all seemed like they were from soap operas, who had an occasional moment where they were decent, but a lot of the time it was just very phony, very cheesy feeling. Like I said, like a soap opera. But I was actually surprised how it wasn't horrible. It had its moments where it was actually kind of enjoyable and fun, cheesy 80s, feel to it. So if you like that 80s vibe, movies that are super like cheesy but yet have that cool early 80s hair and fashion and technology that they thought of was futuristic, but in reality looks super old. If you like that kind of stuff, then this is a pretty cool one for that. It's definitely a movie that I thought was actually pretty fun. But by no means do I consider this to be a good movie. One of my big beefs with this movie and a lot of the movies on this list is I don't understand why directors do this, but they'll have actors that there's no way they could think are actually really quality actors. And you gotta realize what you're working with. But they'll have them do these overly dramatic scenes. And it's like, guys, it's cringeworthy. Because that's really the only thing about this movie that wasn't fun, is some of those scenes dragged on way too long and got pretty obnoxious. But other than that, it was actually pretty fun. The effects in this were not very good, but they did still have this nostalgic charm, this 80s charm to them. Early in this movie, though, the funniest scene, it just had me literally fall out of my chair laughing, is there's this blonde who kind of looks like the Russian's wife in Rocky IV. She has a real 80s supermodel kind of vibe to her, and the acting is so wooden and just so bad. And she says to this guy, "Make love to me," and the way she says it, oh my god, that scene was so funny. It seriously just killed me. About halfway through, there's this one guy who joins the movie, and he's this really creepy dude, and he actually does a really good job of being the creeper in this movie. And his actual acting and his role in general is actually pretty compelling. But it takes about halfway through the movie before you even get to this guy. But once he does join the movie, he's actually pretty interesting. Another beef I really had was for a movie called Creature, you very rarely actually see a creature in this movie. There's little glimpses here and there, but you can tell probably because their budget, at least that's my guess, they had a lack of creatures because it cost money to do those, especially back in the day when everything had to be practical. But you do get little glimpses here and there, and it is pretty cool when you do see it. But for the most part, you don't see it, and it's like, come on, this movie's called Creature. Where's the creature? But the last thing I want to say about this movie is, because it's 80s, even though it's a shit budget, when you do see the creature, as little as you do, it's still cool because there's no bullshit CGI. It's practical effects, and I love practical effects. Whenever you see a practical monster, it just, to me, is always so much more interesting than even the best CGI. So the next one on the list is called Black Wake, and it's from 2018. And first up, the CGI in this is low budget and not good. That part about this, I don't like. But what I do like is it's very, very weird. It has this really interesting, strange feel about it overall. The leading actress, she's very interesting with this really weird accent, but there's just something about her that is just kind of interesting and keeps you kind of paying attention. There's some decent acting in this movie, but then there's some that is just awful. Like the guys who play the FBI agents. Oh my God, these guys just kill me. Their acting is so frozen and wooden. Just so bad. But there are actually some pretty decent actors in this. Like, believe it or not, Tom Sizemore is in this, which blew me away. The guy is a really, really quality actor. I know he's not an A-list guy, but he is definitely a solid B, and he acts his ass off in this. But the rest of the cast, yeah. There's a couple other actors who do okay, but for the most part, it's just a cheap, made-for-sci-fi level type of movie. But the script of this is actually really good. It kind of bummed me out to think about this script. It's actually really interesting and kind of has a lot of unique qualities about it. And yet, why didn't a bigger studio grab this script and make a legit movie out of it? And that bums me out, because every now and then you do see that with these made-for-sci-fi, low-budget kind of movies where it's like the acting sucks, the special effects suck, but man, the script has got something. It's unique. And it's like you wish that someone had taken that and made a legit movie from it. But this movie does really drag at times, and that's probably the biggest downfall of it, is even though it is kind of interesting and the story is interesting, it's kind of weird. There's two halves of this movie. And the end of the first half of the movie, you actually feel like that's the end of the movie. I actually thought it was the end. And then I looked at the time and I was like, oh shit, this movie's only halfway over. And it was kind of bizarre because it really had this like it felt like it ended. The other thing that blew me away about this movie is the size of the cast. It's like every scene, there's some more actors with a little bit part. And I'm like, guys, I feel like you could have taken the budget and had way less people and taken that money and just hired some better actors to play your roles in this that are not your main stars. Because the main couple are actually pretty decent, but it's all that second level supporting actors in this that are just really bad. But it's like, guys, you had so many extras and little bit parts. Take some of that money, just less people. I mean, it was crazy. But I gotta say, I was entertained. It wasn't a great movie. It's not a rewatch movie, but it was actually entertaining for like a low budget, movie you're just bored chilling on a Saturday afternoon kind of thing. It's not half bad if you like B-rated shitty movies. That's a big if, because you gotta put your mind in that zone, because it's definitely a B-rated shitty movie. Next up is a film from 2003 called Deep Shock. So this was the first one where I was like, dude, why did this movie even get made? First off, the CGI is awful. I thought the other two, the CGI wasn't great. Or the last one, actually. The first one didn't have CGI. But the last one that I talked about did have CGI, and I thought that was bad. Oh my God, this CGI is horrendous. This is like 80s, 1980s Lawnmower Man, late 80s, early 90s Lawnmower Man type of special effects in a movie that's made in 2003. It was so bad that it just really ruined the whole movie. Like every time there's CGI in this, you're just completely pulled out of any kind of story or script that's in it. The acting wasn't horrible. It was actually decent at times, but God, that just, so bad a CGI that it just really hurt this movie tremendously. There is some pretty decent actors in this, like Mike Shepard, who is best known for playing Crowley on the TV show Supernatural, which I love him. I love that show. He was so good on it. I wish he had never left the show. I felt like the show actually dropped off once he left. But he's in it and does a really good job for playing the role that he does play, even though it's this really shitty movie. And, you know, I don't know. It's not really shitty. There is some decent qualities to it, and it did entertain me for the most part. But it is, once again, that B-rated, made-for-sci-fi level type of movie. But he did do a really good job in it, as well as the actor Sean Whalen, who was in The Stuff, who was in Hatchet 3, and lots of other smaller roles. But he's definitely a face you'd recognize. And he was fun in this and did do a really good job as well. So the acting wasn't horrible, but a lot of it is the story wasn't very strong. The script is not great, and the CGI is just so bad. But it did have its fun moments. There was some moments, especially towards the end, that weren't bad and did have me laughing some. So, not saying it was horrible. If you're into this kind of movie, like I've said with the last couple, it had its moments. It wasn't horrendous, but it wasn't great, and it definitely wasn't a rewatch. So next up is a movie from the year 2000 called Crocodile. And believe it or not, this was directed by Tobe Hooper. And this was the first movie I've watched out of this roulette series that I absolutely hated. It is so annoying. That's the thing about this movie. Yeah, it's bad, but it's not even as bad as the other couple that I've watched. It's the characters. They're so obnoxious. There's not a single one of these characters in this movie that you like at all. And the main guy that you hate the most, the whole time you're thinking, all right, at least you're going to see these guys get eaten. But especially this douchebag who you can't stand, who's got no shirt on and is obnoxious and loud throughout this whole movie. You're like, at least this guy's going to get eaten. But guess what? He's one of the few that survives at the end of the movie. Like, what are you thinking, movie? Why are you creating this guy that you're definitely going to hate and then not have him eaten by the alligator or crocodile, whatever the fuck it is? Like, come on. That's just, it's so annoying. But all these characters, all of them, even the characters you're supposed to like, you don't. They're obnoxious. There's like this love triangle going on, and the whole time you're just like, I don't give a shit. I could care less about your stupid love triangle. Just get eaten already. And as much as you hate these characters, and as much as you're wanting to see them get eaten, it's so slow. It takes an hour before any of the characters that matter. Like early on, there's a couple fishermen that get eaten, like in the first few minutes. After that, an hour goes by. An hour before anything happens, before anyone gets eaten. It's just all this awful story, setup of these characters you can't stand, and it's just so bad. Seriously, this movie, probably the most annoyed with a movie I've ever been. But for you guys, and to say that I did it, I did finish watching it. I made sure and watched all the way to the stupid fucking credits. But this was not a good movie. And it's sad because Tobe Hooper, I'm like, dude, seriously? I don't understand. I seriously don't understand how Tobe Hooper could make this pile of shit. And I'm sure there's some people that love this because it's got that nostalgic feel, I guess, to it, and it is Tobe Hooper, so maybe some people do, but I don't understand it, because to me, I can't see this even having a cult following. To me, it's just really bad. To me, it commits those ultimate movie sins, the death knell sins, the ones that just, to me, ruin any movie, and that's being boring and being annoying. And it's got that in spades. Even the music in this movie is horrendous. Like, it's not even like that fun early 2000s. It's just really shitty and annoying music throughout this whole movie. Ugh, this movie. Alright, and our last movie was made in 2011, and it's called Mongolian Deathworm. And this was made straight for DVD, sci-fi channel type of thing. But this movie was actually one of the best. Besides Creature, that had that old school, nostalgic, fun quality to it, this movie was fairly modern, and it actually was enjoyable. It didn't have the greatest acting. There's definitely a few that, their acting was horrible. But it did have some decent, known, recognizable actors in this movie that did do a pretty damn good job. The CGI is really where this movie lost me. Other than the CGI, the movie was actually pretty good. It stars Sean Patrick Flanery, which a lot of you would probably recognize. He's been in some really great movies over the years, but mainly he's best known from Boondock Saints. That movie was just badass. Love that movie. And he does a really good job in this movie. And there's actually some other actors in this that do a really good job as well. The script of this movie is actually pretty cool. It's got a really unique kind of flavor to it. One of the things I really liked about it is that it is about the Mongolian death worm. And that's something that I've always been like, why has there not been some more legitimate movies made on it? Because the lore behind it is so fascinating. And the fact that it takes place in Mongolia, where you don't see horror movies taking place. And it's just a little bit of a different culture, and I thought that was pretty cool. But, like I said before, the CGI is really where this movie falls off. Other than that, it's definitely a watchable movie. If you're in the mood for watching something you haven't seen, that's a made-for-sci-fi level, top of the made-for-sci-fi level movies, this might be a good choice. It isn't really campy and silly like Sharks versus Aliens or whatever. It's not Sharknado, right? It's taking this more serious, and it's meant to be more of a serious creature feature. And it does a pretty good job with it. Like I said, if it wasn't for that special effects being crappy, that CGI that's just really shit, if it wasn't for that, this would actually be, I think, a legit movie. I think the CGI is where it falls off. It makes it more of that sci-fi channel level movie. But other than that, it's actually a watchable movie. I actually enjoyed this movie. It was actually pretty fun. And granted, a lot of that is because I am a fan of Sean Patrick Flanery, and he did act his ass off in this movie. But beyond him, the story itself is pretty cool as well. Alright guys, that's my list. Overall, I would tell you, if you're looking for one of these to check out, I'd probably recommend Mongolian Deathworm. But if you're more in the mood for a fun movie, one that's got that nostalgic, campy 80s kind of feel to it, then definitely check out Creature. The other three in the middle, not really worth your time. But if you guys want to watch along with me, that's cool. Also, I'm going to do this again each month. I'm going to play this roulette game. And if you guys have any suggestions for subject matter, like if you want to see me do one on Ghost or one on slashers, same type of concept as this, just spin that app and where I land is where I land, and I pick 5 movies from Tubi. So that's going to be it for today, but please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and ding that little bell, because that's the only way you guys can keep track of when I'm putting videos like this out. And I put them up at least twice every week. But like always guys, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, horror can be fun. I will see you guys next time.